evening. I would like to call this meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. McKenzie?
Here.
Mrs. Manisi?
Here.
Mr. O'Shea? Mrs. Regis Darby? Ms. Santana?
Present.
Mrs. Scott Heaton? Mrs. Williams?
Okay. Vice President Santana, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Kuhn, would you please read the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Good evening. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice and to attend meetings of the public body at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Union Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof published in the Star Ledger and the Union County local sources posted in the administrative building of 2369 Morris Avenue, Union, New Jersey, filed with the Township Clerk and mailed to all persons, if any, who have requested said notice. During the course of the board meeting, the Board of Education offers members of the public an opportunity to address issues regarding the Union Township Public Schools. The board reminds those individuals to identify themselves by name and address. The first public comment period is for any items on the agenda. The second public comment period can be on any issue. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes respectfully. Issues raised by members of the public may or may not be responded to by the board. All comments will be considered and a response will be forthcoming if and when appropriate. The board asks all members of the public to be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Comments regarding students and employees of the board will not be responded to by the board. Madam President.
Thank you. Vice President Santana, would you please read the mission statement?
The mission of the Township of Union Public Schools is to build on the foundations of honesty, excellence, integrity, strong family, and community partnerships. We promote a supportive learning environment where every student is challenged, inspired, empowered, and respected as diverse learners. Through cultivation of students' intellectual curiosity, skills, and knowledge, our students can achieve academically and socially and contribute as responsible and productive citizens of our global community.
Thank you. The board will go into executive session to discuss personnel and legal issues, and action will be taken once we return. May I have a motion to go into
Motion.
executive session?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heaton? Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Be right back.
Are we going in the room where everybody can?
I think it's a cold room.
to do stuff. No, let me know, no.
What? Yes. Yes.
Did I
Yes, my favorite. No, no, because I can hang mine on the side. Yours can't. I'm good. It's like somebody.
here, that's all I care about,
Right, this is where it matters.
for work session.
I need a motion to go back into resume public, right?
Yes, yes, I believe so.
All right, so Mary Lynn sits. I'm just like, that's legal's job to figure out.
Yeah.
I will do that tomorrow. May I have a motion to resume public session?
So motion.
May I have a roll call?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Next, we will have comments from the public on resolutions. Any public comments on any resolutions?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Guy Francis, 297 Colonial Avenue. I had a few questions regarding the resolutions F21 through F27. That's the tentative budget for the 23-24 school year. And I just had some concerns about, were there any opportunities to address the contracted transportation? With it's my understanding that our budget for per month for transportation is close to about $1 million a month, and I just wondered if we looked at that at all. My second concern is the obligations to our collective bargaining units, specifically our teachers union. I think they received a 3%. The following year, 3.3, another 3.9, and then 3.5 the final year. Considering that, they continue to increase above our cap, a 2% cap levy, tax levy, are we considering any cuts in personnel because of that? I know that we received about $7 million from the state, which is probably double what we received the previous year. Are we, I think that probably offsets some of the cuts that we probably would have to have made if we didn't get that money. But are we cutting across the board? That's one. And if so, are the union willing to take some responsibility for the amount of money that we gave them as the board? Are we going to consider cutting some personnel as well, so that it just doesn't come from one particular area? I'm quite sure the seven million also, because it offset the what we had to cut. I'm quite sure we're cutting from other areas, probably programs that impact kids. So I think that we should look at everything. The other issue is last week, I think at the work session, there was some discussion about a seventh period being paid despite teachers not working. I know that when I was on the board, we talked about seventh period being pensionable. And I know that there's some issues with the state saying that it's not, and maybe there's still a grievance going on right now, but in terms of teachers getting paid a 7th period when they haven't worked, is not it's not fiduciary, first of all, and second of all, it kind of think it borderlines on theft of services. So that's something that this board should look at and be open-minded that that can be something that can cause the board call this board a problem. The last two things is I don't know, Ms. Kuhn, if we're digging into our fund balance, but if we are, will this have an impact? Will we have any money left for the following year, 2024? That's something else that we should be looking at as well. When I was on the board, Mr. Mohay always said we should be having money kept in the fund balance just for reserves. And the last thing is, have we have anything in place or any process regarding our special services? Special service no one wants to talk about, but in reality is that it's a small percentage of an overall scheme. It's a small percentage of our students, but it basically, I won't say eats up, but it consumes a larger percentage of our budget. So that's something that I've been saying for years, that we should have some kind of process in place regarding how we put out like professional services. We should have something in place for that. That's the main thing.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, everyone. Ann Margaret Shannon, proud president of Union Township Educators, not Teachers, Educators Association, 2591 Spruce Street. I had no intention of coming up here today, but I feel like I've just been invited to the mic. So I just want to say, anytime you do a budget, 2% is across the entire budget. It doesn't mean every line item gets 2%. Some get 1%, some get 5%, some get 0.5%, some get 2.5%. The 2% is for the total budget, not individual line items. Teachers getting paid not to teach is a disgusting statement that does not happen in this township of Union. If people have a 7th period, they teach the 7th period. As far as special education students, even in your own household, again, you do not put the same percent on every line in your budget. Some things are sacred, and you have to put more money into those sacred lines, and I just hope that the public understands that the board is doing an absolute best they can with the budget. It's a huge, whatever, I wouldn't want to be on the other side of it, but I just really wish people would respect the differences throughout the budget. Every line is not equal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the resolutions? No? May I have a motion to approve the following minutes? January 5th, 2023, organization meeting. January 10th, 2023, executive session. January 10th, 2023, work session. January 17th, 2023, regular meeting. January 17th, 2023, executive session.
Second.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Britton Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby? Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden? Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. All of our communications will be addressed in the fiscal and personnel agenda, and next we will have Dr. Taylor's report.
Thank you. I begin my report by having us recognize a special student and a special educator who've come to the meeting tonight. So I'd like to introduce our principal at Hannah Elementary, Mr. Mark Hoyt. Mr. Hoyt, why don't you come on up, take the mic, and say a few words, first about the student who we've come to honor.
When I started here 24 years ago, I didn't need my glasses to read this, but no one could have predicted the impact that this pandemic would have had on schools and students. This, married with other school trials and the social need to fit in, can affect students in ways that may affect their ability to succeed. When a student rises from the challenges in a way that only makes them stronger, Adela automatically comes to mind. Adela not only exhibits the qualities of a leader, but she also embodies them. Her patience and resilience in situations stand out. When another child is struggling, Adela is there to lend a hand. When it's time to write, she confidently reads paragraphs written by others and makes useful suggestions. Furthermore, during math, Adela is always one of the first students to complete a multi-step word problem. Her ability to think critically and explain herself to her peers has always been intriguing. Adela is a tremendous asset to our school community. She is kind, hardworking, respectful, and an all-around wonderful young lady. As her teacher said, if we had an entire school filled with Adela, it would be the best school around. I'm sure that she will excel at anything she puts her mind to. As such, I'd like to recognize Adela Tubio Rodriguez.
Why don't you come on up? And come on up.
She's shy. She's shy.
Great.
School, all the teachers, of course, they do hard work every day, difficult sometimes moments, but we appreciate all the work that they done, especially Miss Pasquale and his principal, and we are happy to share all the things.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring you back up, Mr. Hoyt, so you can honor a special educator in the building.
All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor. I didn't write this one down, so I don't have to put my glasses on for this one. As you all know, educating our children, our students, our kids, and I do call them our kids because they really belong to all of us. They're on loan for us for 6-7 hours a day. It's not just our teachers, it's not just our paraprofessionals, certainly not just the administrators, but our substitute teachers play a huge role in educating our students. They step into ridiculously difficult situations some days, some classes. The dynamic, as you know, you can step into a class and it's a huge challenge. So it's not an easy gig. One day you're in kindergarten, next day you're in 4th grade, next day you may be in pre-K. You're taking students that, either we call it a number 3 at Hannah Caldwell because they come out the top. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. So our substitute teachers really put in a ridiculous amount of work. Mrs. Farinas, Miss Sophie, as the kids call her, has stepped into so many different challenging situations. She served as a long-term sub in a kindergarten classroom while that teacher was out on maternity leave. You would not have known that Miss Sophie is not by trade an educator. She is a mom and of 2 great boys. Well, I'll say this, Devin seems great. Jackson, who's 2nd grade, not so much. He's a little difficult, but really 2 amazing children. and she's a mom, and she gets it. She gets how to work with kids. She gets what works with them, and she's this perfect combination of stern and loving and nurturing. And she did her kindergarten thing, and then she floated around a few to a few different classrooms, and then because of quite a deal of a good amount of begging by me, I put her into a what could only be perceived as one of our more challenging classes at Hannah Caldwell. And in the 2 weeks she was there, it was like boot camp. They were squared away, and for someone who doesn't have any educational training, to get those kids where they needed to be was absolutely incredible. And we are at Hannah eternally grateful. And when we spoke as teachers, when I spoke to the teachers about who could be the educator spotlight, I'm telling you, and I'm just saying this for your benefit, Miss Sophie, it was a consensus choice that if she couldn't be Teacher of the Year, she should absolutely be recognized here. So at this point, I'd like to recognize Miss Sophia Farinas.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Ms. Hall, I'll take my phone back now. Lest you get some texts from my wife or something like that. So the next part of my presentation has me introducing two individuals who have been working with the school district since last June. The board is aware, community should be aware by now. We have been working with three different sets of what we refer to as equity consultants, folks who have come in to help enhance our efforts to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion, AKA DEI. One leg of that work is working with teachers. Samantha Pugh, she'll be with us in April. Another leg of that work, thanks to Dr. Perez's efforts with a gentleman from Rutgers, Dr. Edward Fergus, has us auditing all of our programs to consider access, equity, and inclusion. And tonight, Elizabeth Riley-Williams and Tammy Borman, both of whom make up a firm called Dash Consulting, have been working since June with the entire leadership team, most recently with principals, and separately with what we refer to as the central office administrators, me, Mr. Benequista, Dr. Perez, and Ms. Kuhn, our business administrator. We've been talking about lots of things that I'm going to give the mic to Elizabeth and Tammy to expand upon. But this has been some intense work, I'll say that. They might not share this, but I will say the work that we've been doing with them has been helping us uncover our hidden biases, the way we may microaggress against each other, how we're treating each other. Really what we're trying to do is build relationships overall. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Elizabeth and then to Tammy, and I'll set up the slideshow for you. And thank you, parents, for coming, Mr. Hoyt, and all.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing us these few moments to be with you. I'm Elizabeth Williams Riley. I'm the president and CEO of Dash Consulting, and my colleague here is...
Good evening. Tammy Borman. I have my own consulting practice, but my very favorite partner is Elizabeth Williams Riley.
And we have joined forces to respond to a call from the district to help the principals and help the entire district and its leadership team to reimagine and closely examine what it means to build skills, knowledge, and the capacity to carry out a equity plan and make sure that everyone is on the same page and has a fundamental understanding of what equity means in a school district and what it means to lead that effort. So often folks go straight to task before they've had a chance to build capacity, and that's what we're going to focus on with the group that we are assigned. So what we know, why does this work matter, was a critical question that we had to ask, and we had to focus each of the principals on as we did this work. Again, we started back in June in 2022, and it required us to do some substantive and more comprehensive assessments around perceptions and realities. And what we found out is that when we look at school culture and climate, the culture was really responding to what people were actually doing. And then the climate was how people felt about what they were actually doing. And so we had to be clear about that. And the idea of working collaboratively among the professionals, those that were educators and administrators, and serving the schools was really important. What we also know is that when we looked at the state of the schools in Union, we realized that we had to start with the engagement of each participant, how we educated them, and a sense of empowerment. And when we talk about empowerment, we're not talking about someone handing over and empowering others. We were talking about the idea that everyone had the necessary resources and the necessary things they needed to achieve their jobs. And they felt confident in looking at and examining equity from a personal level and a professional level. And so having said that, they would be equipped as individuals and equipped collectively to do the work and not feel like they were going to have to lose any sense of empowerment through this work. Clickers work and technology works, but it's not right now. So the first thing that we did was an assessment. I'm going to turn it over to Tammy to talk about the assessment piece and what we found out and what we learned from the assessment.
This is a practice that we do in any organization we enter because we come in as people from the outside of the community, and the first thing we need to understand is what's happening. What are the concerns? What are the issues? What are the celebrations? What are the norms of the community? So we did that by using a digital survey and then having an opportunity to engage individuals. So there were some key themes that emerged, and those themes really helped us shape how we approached our work with the central office team and with the principals. So there were three key themes that emerged: urgency and value, and that had to do with how people perceive this work. And you can see from the points on the screen that there was not necessarily a dynamic of alignment, right? Not everybody shared a perspective that centering diversity, equity, and inclusion was essential or was even necessarily mission-oriented. So we recognize that that's a concern because for some folks this was very urgent, and for others this felt like a distraction from other issues, particularly moving through a time of COVID. We learned that there were some folks who really wanted to build an intentionally inclusive learning environment, but they weren't very clear on whether there was buy-in from their colleagues. So the question around whether there was urgency to this work and value attached to it, that is a theme that emerged for us when we reviewed the results of the survey. This notion of absence of team alignment, again, that there were opportunities that were unrealized for the leadership to learn together with and from one another, to examine, to think, to reflect, to actually welcome multiple perspectives in the room. And there was a desire for that among many, but not a clear sense of opportunity to do that. So we felt that was important because it's very tough to align around priorities if you're not actually talking about them as a team. So that became important for us, and to be able to build capacity for the language that we're using to talk to one another as principals and as central office leaders. And then finally, the dynamic of willingness and obligation. Am I doing this work? Do I see this work as being essential? Or do I feel obligated to do it because that's the zeitgeist that's happening around us? And part of the work that we felt was important was needing to be clear about how leaders do this work together, what the promise of it is, as Elizabeth always says, not just the practice, but the promise of what it means to center this work as leaders. So those were the three themes that emerged for us and really helped us shape how we approached the group once we learned these things by hearing the group first. I'll pass it back to you.
After hearing the group, we decided on a course of action for the group. And what we wanted to do with the group was actually find out and put in place the conditions in which they could learn. The first thing we talked about was this idea of making sure that individuals had the opportunity to operate in brave space and that they were having the behaviors and the attitudes that would allow people to share, that there was psychological safety that ultimately established a trust amongst the team, and that there was inclusive leadership. That the inclusive leadership was not just about everyone being around the table, but people having a sense of belonging, a sense of value, and they felt that they were actually had the opportunities to succeed in their jobs, even in the midst of challenges, even in the midst of disagreement, that they still were able to feel like they had a sense of belonging and value in the process. We also wanted to make sure that the messaging and what we did in terms of engagement was consistent, and that we've centered the work on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we had to provide some fundamental knowledge and information about that. What we realized is that oftentimes people were using equity and equality in the same way. And that was not what we were focused on. We had to let people understand the difference, and that equity and equality were distinctly different because of the resources folks needed, and that sameness was not achieving the goals that they desired. So doing everything the same way did not meet the needs of every person. And so we had to be clear about that and get some commonality there. We also engaged with each of the principals on a monthly basis. So our journey to date has led to several sessions that we meet with the team, and we focus on several different topics. And throughout this time, we have had a chance to do a check-in with the group about their learning, about the application of their learning, and what is meant in their school buildings. So it's one thing to work with them with each other, but we wanted to make sure that whatever they learn and the skills that they pick up is transferable to their buildings and to the schools that they work. So 100% of the participants in this program felt that this was valuable, that this experience has been extremely valuable for them personally and professionally. And they felt like they also were using the behaviors they learned. And these brave space behaviors will have an opportunity to introduce to the entire board and talk about how these matter and the implications of their behaviors. So what we learned is that there were a lot of participants that learned to really avoid making assumptions and avoid allowing stereotypes to inform their decisions. So once they understood how to recognize implicit bias and understood how to pay attention to when it comes in play, they began to behave and act differently and not operate on stereotypes. We also know the participants started increasing their ability to listen and actively listen, to develop empathy, and have a better understanding of worldviews and different types of experiences that people bring to the table. They could acknowledge and recognize that the students, as well as the principals and all the employees in the district, they don't come with empty slates, that they come to the table offering up and opportunities and learnings that everyone can benefit from. They also increase mindfulness, and not just about their own awareness and who they are, but they were more mindful about how people's lived and learned experiences can impact their educational environments. And so that was important. They also began to trust one another and then talk about what accountability can look like. And just be clear, this is the beginning of the process. And so to shift that thinking in this direction has been significant, because accountability and trust and making sure that people could behave in a way that was respectful and upheld equity and gave folks multiple dimensions of diversity attention was important. And lastly, folks use their awareness and their raised consciousness to be more analytical, more thoughtful, and engage in more critical thinking about how inequities show up and ways in which exclusion could be harmful to the district. So often they raise incidences, Dr. Taylor talked about microaggressions they introduced some situations, and we had to role play and figure out what went wrong and how to change that dynamic. And that was important because in incorporating this, we want them to have the practice. And so we've established this laboratory and a community of learning and practice to help implement equity as they look at their plans and moving forward.
Another question that we asked in this mid-course survey, and we'll come to the end of this, is what's been your most significant learning experience while dealing and engaging with your colleagues, using dialogue as a tool for learning with and from one another? What we know in so many of the organizations where we work is that first we have to set the conditions for the kind of learning that needs to happen. That's what Brave Space is about. How do we hear one another even when it's really hard to hear somebody else's truth? How do we hold ourselves accountable? How do we respond in ways that enable learning? Dialogue is a process that we've been using, and we're hearing from our colleagues in these sessions that they're finding that to be useful. And they're beginning to understand particularly the context of race privilege and what that means, how that shows up, how that affects relationships in the community. And they're also talking about the fact that there's a deeper understanding of how their colleagues across academic levels are encountering issues of DEI in their buildings. So you've got people who are in elementary schools resourcing folks who are in middle schools, resourcing folks who are in high school, so that there's a learning community, as Elizabeth referenced. And then there's one more question that we wanted to share with you as we bring this to a close, because there's an interesting process and we're halfway through it.
So we talked about this idea of psychological safety and what that meant for the group. And so one of the things that folks talked about was that they had a moderate level of psychological safety. And what this means is that they can come to the table without having their ideas shut down or be humiliated, or there's some kind of punishment associated with critical thinking or challenging the status quo. And people are experiencing psychological safety, but there's a need to have a heightened level of that, particularly in a critical decision-making time in the midst of crisis, challenge, and change. So we wanted to make sure we talked about what are those conditions and what would make this happen. We also wanted people to be more intentional. And we realized that folks said, you know what? I'm being more intentional about how I think about and engage and listen to my staff. I'm making more informed decisions because I'm getting insight before just jumping to conclusions. They also said that they were able to recognize and hear and accept multiple viewpoints and not shut people out. The last thing that we talked about was this idea of making sure that you are deliberately establishing psychological safety, and people were creating opportunities for folks to be contributors and give feedback and take risk to make decisions in the organization. Now, we just gave you a lot about how we engage folks, but what this really means is we spent over 100 hours dedicated to designing and implementing face-to-face time, coaching time, one-on-one time to support people in their professional roles. Realizing that all of this work is necessary to work in collaboration with the other 3 consultants. So one consultant would not be able to accomplish all of this, and we took on the responsibility of making sure that each individual in high decision-making power roles were able to be equipped with this understanding of equity and psychological safety and Brave Space, because they have to use this in order to make decisions that impact the entire district. And so we've dedicated a lot of time, and folks have been committed. People show up, and they are challenged to reimagine and rethink. Now, remember, we're working with educators, principals, and administrators. They have some similarities to students. Okay, so this was not easy to do, especially when people have different opinions and not easily trustworthy of others, right? So we had to work at and do that work in the laboratory face to face to make sure that we build the conditions where they can be able to engage. And so we're excited about this work, and it's not done. We still have, we're at the halfway point, but we see indicators. We get feedback, and we know that it is impacting their relationships, and we look forward to continuing this work.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Tammy. I want to echo something that our previous president of the board, Mary Lynn Williams, once said, and that was, really still resonates. We ripped the Band-Aid off. I don't know if you recall you saying that, but we ripped the Band-Aid off. In that, the hard work that Elizabeth just alluded to has presented itself through emotion. There's been a lot of emotions have been left on the table since last June. Crying, raising voices, no physical altercations, nothing to that level, but a lot of emoting that to me is exposing a lot of raw feelings that need to come to the surface so we can treat our faculty and our students more effectively. So with that, I want to thank you both for coming. I'd like the clicker back. Should I ask, open for questions? Yeah. I mean, anybody have questions for Elizabeth and Tammy before they head out? No?
I just wanted to say thank you. It's hard work, and I think you've just breached the surface. So much more work needed to be done, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Santana. And thank you, Tammy and Elizabeth, for being here.
I forgot to do that.
Oh, no, you don't have to.
I was just wondering about it the whole time. No, I'm just.
Ah,
Okay, no, all right, thank you.
thank you, Elizabeth. Let me just have the clicker back. Have a good night. Safe travels, and we're going to see you soon. The next thing I'd like to do before I have Ms. Kuhn introduce our auditor is just very quickly give some of our students some shout outs. There's been a lot of action on the student front that I really have to highlight. I don't know if all of us in the room follow the school district's Instagram page, but this was splashed out there 2 days ago. Our relay team, our 4x400 relay team, is now national champions. They've competed, as you can see, in New York with other track and field athletes from around the country. They came in first, and I'm giving shout-outs by name. Seniors Gabe, sophomore Carla, senior Oko, and senior Sierra for going out there and doing us proud. That's an amazing accomplishment. I'm going to highlight them in my Union's Pride newsletter. I also want to give a shout-out to somebody who is among the first recipients of a substantial scholarship, and that's Caitlin Laverty, who, as you can see, received the Laverty, thank you, sorry, the Union County Daughters of Ireland Scholarship. That's a pretty substantial award, and she was among a very select few in the county to have been given that honor. And finally, once again, our junior ROTC program is top stuff. I mean, we've got a killer junior ROTC program. That's a statistic at the bottom, by the way, I had not known until now, a couple days ago. We've taken first place 24 years in a row in the state drill competition. We were clearly among the top in the country drill squads around. And I think I mentioned at one point earlier in the school year, we can only accept, I believe, 100 students, and we had the last time I checked, about 125 total wanting to get in, so about 25 students on the wait list. We'll try to get them in as soon as our seniors graduate, if possible. But I'm so proud of our junior ROTC program, among others. It's just not something that you can find in other high schools. It's part of what makes us so special as a community. So with that, Ms. Kuhn, I'm going to pass the torch to you to introduce our auditor.
Not a problem. Good evening. School districts in the state of New Jersey are required by law to be audited on an annual basis each year. And tonight we have Mr. Warren Korecki, our partner with Suppley Clooney, to provide our results from our fiscal 22. So they have a team that comes out primarily between October and the end of December, and basically they're scrutinizing and going through random checks of different things in all of our financial areas, from accounts payable, payroll, just the whole overview of all of our funds, including Fund 20. So with that said, Mr. Korecki.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda. Good evening. As Yolanda said, my name is Warren Korecki. I'm with Suppley Clooney and Company. I was the partner in charge of this audit engagement. As she said, you're required to have an annual audit of your fiscal records yearly, and this is the report for June 30th, 2022. The report's been filed really late this year, as in last year. What's happening is the numbers that go into the report come from the Division of Pension, and they're just getting the numbers out later and later. I don't know if that's COVID related or whatever, but these is the latest we ever gotten. We've got them by February 15th, which really by statute, the audit should be filed by December 5th, I'm pretty sure. So it's really late. So it has nothing to do with any of the records that the district did or anything that we're doing. You're waiting for a couple of numbers that go into the report, and the whole thing just flows and ties in together. You should have received a copy, 2 reports. There's the audit report, which deals with the financial records, and there's what they call an auditor's management report. They're both required by the Department of Education. These are filed with the Department of Education in the County Superintendent's Office. It's not just a financial audit, it's also a compliance audit with various rules and regulations of the state, and it's quite extensive. This small report, even though it's only 40, 50 pages long, is backed up by a audit manual that's about 300 pages long that the state develops and we have to follow. And there's maybe 14, 15 different general categories. It's administrative procedures, financial reporting, it's the student activity funds, the cafeteria, transportation, facilities and capital assets. And in all these areas we have to do tests and compliance requirements of all those regulations. This is where your recommendations would be. If you have the report on page 10, there is one formal recommendation this year, and I'll just read it. It's something that can be easily corrected. It says the board secretary's report should be reconciled with the treasurer's report and with the reconciled bank statements. Basically what we're saying, there's 3 different areas here. You have a secretary's report, treasurer's report, and then you have the bank rec. They all should agree. In some minor sense, they just weren't all in agreement. We had to go through and adjust all the records to make them into agreement, okay? There should be a corrective action plan on this to say if it's corrected. And it's filed with the Commissioner, again, Education, and the County Superintendent. Is there any questions on the small report? Good.
What was the difference between the reconciliations? Are we talking about in the disbursements of money, or what was?
No, it's just when something is recorded, Mr. O'Shea. In other words, you have the board secretary's got to give it to the treasurer. It's just a delay between the two. So this might not have a disbursement or a receipt, but the report's filed, doesn't go back to the reconciliation that they're doing, and then you put them all together. I mean, it was, put it this way, it took us only a couple of hours to figure it out. It wasn't like it was something, not that you couldn't do, but we did it, and it's just, but it should be done on a monthly basis. They should be into agreement. That's all. Okay.
I had a question. So, oh, yeah, I had a
Who's
question.
that?
Yes,
Oh,
me.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just
I couldn't
waiting
s-
for eye contact.
No,
I thought you were waiting for Yolanda, sorry.
I thought she said something.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
did, thank you.
Okay.
So I guess that was my question. So what checks and balances do we put into place so that on a monthly basis or whatever basis you're talking about, that could be reconciled?
Well, that's supposed to be the check and balance. In other words, you're supposed to take the secretary's report, compare it to the treasurer's report, and they're supposed to agree to the bank records. That just wasn't done on a monthly basis. So if you do it on a monthly basis and it doesn't agree, then somebody has to go back and put them all together.
Right. And for clarity, it was a timing thing. It was at the end of the year, and so there were some adjustments that were made that the town treasurer didn't get in time. So it was a timing thing. But we do reconcile on a monthly basis as required.
Yeah, there are reconciliations, but that is the check and balance to compare the reports. Okay. The next report is the annual comprehensive financial report. This is the financial statements that are developed from the records of the business administrator's office. The report in here is developed by GAAP. That's just a reporting, it's the oversight board that develops how the financial statement should be presented. There's a lot of information in here. There's a lot of duplication in here. There's district-wide statements they call. There's fund statements. There's budgetary statements. Gets a little confusing. There's a lot of information in here. There's statistical information. There's notes. There's one, page that I like to point out to board members. It's called the C schedules, and it starts on page 85 and it goes to page 95. So if you're ever looking at this report, there's a lot of duplication in here. There's a lot of redundancy, but there's one schedule in here that probably is more important than the rest of them. It's a comparative statement of revenues and expenditures and fund balance. It gives you your budget for the year, what you spent for the year, what revenues you realized, how you budget those things, and it also acts as a profit and loss. So there's a lot of information in this thing, and it's very detailed. A lot of the other statements are summarized. You look at them, you really can't tell too much, just in general what happened. I'd just like to go over the surplus a little bit. I mean, you started the year with 15 million and change in surplus. You ended the year with 20,124,000, so you did very well. However, that 20 million is not all available at any one time. It's made of several components. One component is encumbrances for 3,700,000, and all it is, those are orders that were given out at year end. They haven't been completed, so the money is set aside when those orders come in the next, July, August, September. Okay, you have the surplus that we're using in this budget year 22-23. Out of that 20 million, we're using 3,600,000. That's supporting the budget that we're in right now. You have a capital reserve of 1,366,000. That's for capital improvements. You have an unemployment account, 725,000. If there's anybody laid off, you can pay the state Division of Unemployment. You have what's called excess surplus. It's 931,000. That's above your 4%. It's not very much, but the state has this rule and regulations. Anything over 4% of your operating expenses becomes excess, and all it means you have to use it in your next year's budget, the 23-24 budget that you're developing. And your unassigned surplus that can be used for anything cash flow in your budget going forward is 7,365,908. So that makes the $20 million, even though it's a substantial amount, but it's broken down to a bunch of components, and it's the way you can use it. The number that's important to use is 7,365,000. That can be used in any budget going forward. That's your 4%. I like to say that's the 4%. You go back to the 2% next year. It used to be a 2% on your operating surplus. Now it's, during the COVID, you generated some more surplus, so the state changed the law to 4. Now it's going to be 2, so that number should be a little bit lower as you're going forward. Probably change it to excess surplus. And that's basically about it. If there are any questions on anything we do, anything in the report, I'll gladly answer any questions that anybody has.
Just to give an overview to the rest of the board, when we're talking about the excess surplus and the size of a district as we have with the budget, what is your educational guess? Because I've known you a very long time, Warren, as far as doing this. What would be the number you're saying a district like this should have?
Well, John,
I know you're going to say me the same thing you told me 30 years ago.
well, no, because it doesn't. You have to go by the state law. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They want that base of 7,600,000, but you can use anything of that number that you want to. It doesn't mean you have to stay at the 4%. You can use anything up until it. You can go right down to 0 if you wanted to. In other words, if you wanted to control taxes or you had to increase spending in the budget, you can use it all. So you have to look at your ability to generate it back into the next year, which you probably won't have as much because you're going to the 2% from the 4%, so you have to watch your next year's budget.
Okay. At least we're aware.
If there are no other questions, thank you for being here. Yolanda, congratulations on a relatively clean audit.
Yes. I have to thank my team. I can't do this alone, and there's still a lot more work and improvements and streamlining things, so hopefully we can continue to work and
Thank you.
hopefully be able to put more money into reserves.
And
Because I wanted to also maybe you can highlight what percentage of our budget are we spending?
I'd just like to thank the BA and the superintendent for all the cooperation during the engagement. We come in, we ask a lot of questions.
What about me?
Everything's fine. I'd like to thank the board also for the appointment. I mean, we do appreciate the business, so thank you.
Okay, the next part of my presentation, actually, two more parts of the presentation tonight. I want to work with Ms. Kuhn to, again, present information about the preliminary budget we're recommending the board approve tonight, and then I'm going to go over HIB data, like I do every month. To the community, this is the same, almost the same, I tweaked a few things, presentation that I provided last week at the work session of the board. So for the board's sake, I only added a couple of things here and there. Otherwise, you're seeing the same presentation. So the preliminary budget was developed since, oh gosh, back in November up to, really you could say tonight. And I'm not going to go over every piece of the timeline, but what you can see here is that an inordinate amount of days are spent from November to now pouring over every account with every member of the leadership team who has some responsibility for building a budget. we check all the accounts, we verify there are no redundancies. You know, I don't have a principal in one school requesting the same supplies a supervisor might be requesting when it's not necessary. On the other hand, if we see gaps, we ask why, and if there's no substantial reason why there's something missing, we put it in the budget. So this is the preliminary budget timeline. Now, the thing that really, sorry about the technical issue. There you go. The thing that that threw this year's budget off, even more so than previous budgets, was what actually my colleague in Brick Township said today in an article on NJ.com. Many districts like ours experienced the perfect storm. Federal grant money through the ESSER grant is running out. Some districts like ours use it to offset our operational budget over the last year or so. We're able to do that again, but not quite to the same levels we were previously. Contracted services to fill the gaps left by teacher vacancies, paraprofessional vacancies, bus driver vacancies, had the district having to go outside to find the individuals we needed to staff all those positions. Unfortunately, at the same time, our country has been faced with inflation and a supply and demand issue that has driven costs up extraordinarily. We are seeing, for instance, the salaries we have to pay for nurses who we must bring in from contracted services for specific students who have very serious medical challenges have doubled. And so between inflation, increased supply and demand costs, severe staff shortages, and then all the other drivers of the budget, increase in salaries this year for all four bargaining units, the increase in medical costs, which still exceeds the rate at which local taxes can be levied to help offset some of these expenses, and other special services that we must provide continue to go up on top of all of these other variables. At the same time, that's the expenditure challenge we're dealing with. The revenue challenge still remains. I believe it was Governor Christie who placed a cap on the percentage of local taxes that could be raised. And while that's a good thing for taxpayers like me and everybody in this, just about everybody in this room, the only downside is when districts are in a crunch, they can't go beyond the 2% to increase more revenue. So districts are left to rely on state funds. Fortunately, this year, and thanks to legislators in the area who helped support our district, we were able to use enough state aid, a little more than we anticipated, to offset what was severe shortage of dollars for us to balance the budget. I must point out, as my colleague in Brick did today in the article, that the Department of Education is still making up for lost time. It's been decades since districts like ours received our proper fair share of state aid. Our costs are going up way faster and more extraordinarily than any state aid we're going to receive. So this is just a catch-up game we're going to continue to have to play until we can come up with even more creative ways to scale back expenditures without reducing programs, staff, and all the things that obviously directly impact students. One thing this board committed me and the business administrator to do is not make cuts of any sort that would directly impact students. And again, thanks to the additional state aid that we received, we were able to make sure that that didn't happen. Other things that Ms. Kuhn and I did starting back in October, because we did see this coming, it wasn't like we were just taken by surprise a month ago, 2 months ago, was we required all of our administrators to go through a much more rigorous vetting process before they could process their purchase requests. We didn't stop certain purchases we knew had to be made for the benefit of students and staff if necessary, if it would directly impact students. But any extraneous expenses we felt could wait, we held off on having processed. We also were able to, as I pointed out earlier, continue to use some of our federal grant money that was provided by the Biden administration to respond to COVID to offset some operational costs. But I must warn the board and the community, that money is going to be done by the end of this next fiscal year, which means we're no longer going to have what we refer to as ESSER, E-S-S-E-R, funding to offset operational costs with the 2024-2025 fiscal year. We will continue, however, to use what is called ESA, E-S-E-A, Elementary and Secondary Education Act money, that's Title I, II, III, and IV, to continue to offset salary costs and supply costs and other professional development costs. We're also going to be, and started to do so already, continue to consolidate bus routes however we can without severely impacting students. I don't want students having to wait for buses if we can help it. But we still must make even more efficient use of our current bus routes as we can to cut costs so that those costs don't impact student programs and staffing. To address the shortfall, besides using some of our federal grant money and also doing the things that I pointed out in the previous slide, we did, going forward into next year's budget, preliminary budget, we did make reductions in various accounts. Again, as per the board's directive, we did not directly impact student programs to a great extent or staffing. One thing that we are considering, still up for discussion, is changing the middle school schedules, start time and end time. Everything would stay the same, number of instructional minutes, the schedule framework itself for now would stay the same. But changing the start time by 14 minutes and the end time by 14 minutes earlier on both ends of the day would be a significant cost savings to the district in the area of transportation. We'd be able to consolidate routes and then use those saved routes to fill in other routes that we're currently having to fill by bringing in outside contracts. So that's one thing that would save us a little more than $250,000 next year. And finally, on this slide, I already mentioned federal grants. I do want to point out if there's a silver lining to a very difficult budget. It could be this. As per the board's directive to bring back our powers from ESS, we are also going to work on bringing back our 37 behavior technicians currently servicing students who have written into their IEPs that they require such. Behavior techs, BTs for short, are serve a similar function as paraprofessionals, but they are more qualified. They have more credentials and a certain level of training that a paraprofessional doesn't have. We have been using a contracted service for these employees, but now what we'd like to do, at a cost savings, besides the fact that we'd be bringing them in, bringing them home, hire our own behavior technicians. These could be, of course, the same BTs that are currently utilized here in the district who might want to leave their outsourced company and come to the school district. So with that now, I want to have Ms. Kuhn not talk about every line, but just give you a summary of this slide. And I see some people are taking pictures of the slides. I promise you that, fine. This presentation will also be on the board, our school district website under the superintendent link. And Ms. Kuhn, I believe we now have to also put a special link just for the preliminary budget going forward. Am I correct?
Yes.
So that'll be on the front page as well. So you'll get all this information. Go ahead, Ms. Kuhn.
So essentially, as we discussed last week, this is a slide of our various different expenditures sorted by account. In this case, we're calling them series 1 through 9. As you can see, the 100s are all your compensations of, as Dr. Taylor says, the settling of the negotiation of all 4 bargaining units, stipends, overtime, things of that nature, and you can see that's an increase of 6%. Second is the benefits, as you can tell. The state benefit increased by 15%, We are under a cap with Aetna at 12%. With that 12%, though, it is approximately alone in healthcare, roughly 3 million increase. So that helps explain some of the cost drivers increases. Series 3 is your professional services. And in that category is our contracted services, as Dr. Taylor mentioned about the BTs, possibly hiring some additional BTs instead of contracting them out. In this account also is our ESS. Right now they have our substitutes, and we're looking at also trying to bring those also back to the district. 400s are your utilities, as you can see. What I would like to point out, though, in the next category is your purchase services. You can see that increase of roughly 23%. Those costs have escalated. And that category is our tuition for out-of-district, special ed, our related services, our charter schools, choice schools, aid in lieu, which is transportation of parents that we're able to reimburse the parent. So that category was increased a lot compared to the last few years. Let's see what else increased. The 700 series, that increased by 93%, and primarily that increase is pretty much our ViewSonic boards, custodial equipment. And then the last category here, you have your miscellaneous, the pre-K, which dropped. The district has to pay a certain portion to our pre-K special ed, our contribution. So that decreased a bit overall. So those are just some of the individual expenses that help or that are our cost drivers. The next is just a summary of the total of our operating expense, and then you can see our revenue. One thing that Dr. Taylor did not mention is this year we were eligible for health care adjustment, bank cap, and enrollment adjustment. And these are all predicated on information and data from previous years. So bank cap is essentially funds that we are eligible to raise the taxes. They were left, we didn't exercise the maximum in the previous years. And so that's what bank cap represents. The health care adjustment is we're putting in what our health care cost is this year versus previous years, and there's a calculation in the DOE that calculate what our health care adjustment is, and in enrollment, we've definitely increased in our enrollment. So thankfully, all those adjustments and bank cap totaled roughly 2.5 million. So had not we had those adjustments, that would have been another 2.5 that we would have had to look for reductions in some of the lines. Dr. Taylor, anything else you would like to say?
Ms. Kuhn, you want to clarify the slide and then I'll move on?
Oh, okay. The last slide there is just basically showing you our tax levy and the general fund total. And the last line represents the tax impact on the average family. Basically, the net valuation of the town has gone down. However, though, the school tax rate increased. And so I've been in consultation with the tax assessor, and we're both in agreement that it would increase by $150.
Going forward, some of the things that Ms. Kuhn and I are already putting in place include the following. We are, as I pointed out earlier, looking to restructure the middle school schedule. On the docket for next year is a consideration of how we might be able to make the high school schedule more effective and also reduce some of our costs. We're going to be continuing to scrutinize every request purchase likely in September not October. We'll accelerate that process next year. We're already looking ahead at the 2024-2025 budget. The other things here, as I pointed out earlier, are a lot about making more efficient the current resources we have, including personnel. Are there any questions from the board before I move forward to the HIB report for either Ms. Kuhn or myself? If not, one last thing I'll say before I work on the HIB data. The public should know, as the board is aware, this preliminary budget is subject to change between now and the final budget, which is due in May. We'll be making another presentation.
April.
I'm sorry, April. Thank you for the clarification. So at the April board meeting, I anticipate Ms. Kuhn and I will make a similar presentation. If any updates occur, for the sake of full transparency for the board and, of course, the community, we'll lay that out on the slides. Oftentimes, not many major changes occur, but there might be some tweaks here and there from the preliminary phase of the budget to the final phase of the budget. And finally, I want to conclude my presentation with the latest HIB data, as I did last meeting, and I'll continue to do. I'm going to move this over for you in case you can't see it. I'm comparing the number of HIB cases for the same period of time, roughly a month period of time last year and this year. You're actually going to see that both at Burnett and the high school, which is on the next slide, saw lower HIB cases this year than last year, which is a good thing. It's a positive sign. In terms of founded cases, we had 5 investigations total. That concludes my report, unless there are any other general questions from the board. Thank you, and thanks for being patient throughout the whole presentation.
Wake up, everybody. Okay. All right, next we will have education and student discipline. Ms. Carbonell.
Madam President, if I may, I just want to thank Dr. Taylor for inviting me to the Union High School orientation last week. I had an awesome time. I want to recognize Principal Bassard, the student ambassadors that greeted everyone and walked everyone around to the different programs and academies, the staff, the administrators, the coaches that were there. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention those phenomenal student performers that gave us a little preview of Mamma Mia. So I just wanted to give them a little shout out. The Education Committee has been working on a number of items. One of them was the school calendar, and there were several things we took into consideration, including the November break, as well as the number of PD days. The decisions that we made were based on a number of different considerations. One of them had to do with parents and daycare. Another had to do with maximizing the instructional time. Additionally, determining the efficacy of the professional development that we currently offer, and making sure that that process is collaborative and inclusive. So thank you to the committee members for the time we spent working on that. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Education Student Discipline Committee presents the following resolutions for board's consideration. E1A, affirm superintendent's determination of HIB, and E2, approve the 2023-2024 school calendar.
Second.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
That would be a yes on E1, E1A, and abstain from E2.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes on both.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby?
Yes to E1A, abstain from E2.
Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Next, we have fiscal and planning. Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Fiscal and Planning Committee presents the following resolutions for the board's considerations. F1 through as I have printed, F30.
Is there a second?
Excuse me, there is a walk-on that I've just been informed.
I thought we would do the F1 to F30 first, since
Okay.
we had the workshop, and then
Gotcha.
you can present the F31.
Okay.
Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Any discussion? May I have a roll call?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby? Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Hedo?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Mr. O'Shea, was there a walk-on?
There is a walk-on that I just received. I would like our board business administrator, Ms. Coons, please read it.
Yes, walk-on F31, approve the Edmonton French classes, and I'll read it into the record. Approved Edmonton to provide the Union High School French classes, an asynchronous model of teacher support tentatively from April 1, 23 to June 20, 23, not to exceed $45,201. Additionally, in-district teacher coverage is also needed, and that is not to exceed $13,104, for a total not to exceed of $58,314.
First, we have that.
So a motion and second is needed.
Yeah.
I make the motion, and
We have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Santana,
What is this? Say it again, I'm sorry, slower for me.
can you give an explanation of what this resolution is asking, or what this is, what Edmentum is?
Okay, I'll yield to Dr. Perez. You can go into more depth.
Just hold the button.
So this particular resolution was on a previous agenda, and it's regarding the French classes and using Edmentum to provide those services so that our students can have not just asynchronous instruction, but also access to a French certified teacher to provide support for them.
And they're providing the teacher, or we are?
They're providing the teacher.
A physical teacher in the classroom?
Not literally in the classroom. It's asynchronous, but the teacher will be available to them during the week.
Virtually?
Yes.
Madam President?
Yes.
I believe that was the old resolution that reflects the previous quote.
Yes, but because of the timing between Thursday and today, the company's getting back to us on the numbers, so we didn't want to keep it from not being on and waiting until next April, so that the instruction didn't happen until the next board agenda.
So the rate says not to exceed?
Yes, not to exceed.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members?
And
Is that a yes?
it's time, yes,
Okay.
it's time of the essence. I just feel we said this was turned down and we're walking it. I don't know who agreed to this walk-on.
I said we could walk it on.
Okay, I don't know. So how much is it? So what's the difference from last time to this time? What changed? Just that they're gonna have a virtual teacher as opposed to a substitute?
That's correct. I can answer that question, Dr. Perez. That's correct. At this point, we had substitutes on a rotational basis. We didn't even have enough substitutes to cover the class, and they were certainly not able to provide any instruction regarding French. So they were getting nothing essentially for the last week.
So I think I did ask, we have no candidates, so this
That's
is
correct.
our last alternative.
That's correct.
Students do get some education, some instruction.
Additionally, this is a New Jersey certified teacher, my understanding.
Certainly a last resort, but it's either this or the kids aren't getting anything. So we have no,
can't do that.
personally, we have no choice.
And the district has assured us that they'll continue looking for a French teacher.
Oh, yeah?
Ms. Burns-Watson?
Yeah, as one of the people who actually yelled out no to this last time this happened, because I do feel strongly about that as well. We need a teacher in the classroom. We need them with the students. I'm flabbergasted at the fact that we cannot get somebody, and we will continue to look for something, but our kids need. I give up. It's one of those where I am saying they need something in the classroom, so this is right now the only thing that we have available to them.
So do we have no French teachers?
Nope.
We only have one French teacher remaining at the high school. That French teacher is taxed. There's no way she can obviously take on any additional periods. I mean, I think I pointed out to the board last time we went down this road. This isn't my first rodeo with finding a French teacher. In my previous district, took a year and a half, still couldn't find one. I surveyed the community to determine what alternative language we might be able to offer. It was a hard thing to do. They decided Mandarin. Believe it or not, we found more Mandarin teaching candidates than we did French. Not ideal, but this is what we're left with.
Ms. Regis Darby?
I would have to look that up for you and get back to you on that.
I'm just asking because if you think about any seniors right now who graduated, in order for them to get a credit for French, they have to have AP, right? That's the only thing. They have to score level 4 or 5. And the statistics, when you think about it, if you give me the data from last year in terms of the kids who took the French AP classes and passed it and got a 3 and 5, to get the credits in college, what does the data show to support that what we're doing in French class is actually, the kids are actually moving on and getting credit for it in college? Because I know the French class, and I know how many kids were in the AP classes, and I know for a fact that I can just speak of my daughter, she took the AP French class and she got a 4, she was able to get college classes, and I know there's not a lot of students who took that AP exam and got 3s, 4s, and 5s to get credit for it. So I'm just trying to see like the data that supports like $50,000, you know?
3 months. Right, April, May, June, 3 months.
I think there should be that data behind it that supports it. If it's just a requirement, there's difference between just like to pass for a requirement to have that for your thing versus it's going to be like you don't have to take it in college at all. And our kids, the data doesn't support that when our kids go to college, they still have to go back in French 1.
Dr. Taylor, I apologize.
It was Ms. Manisi's turn.
I mean, I understand all this with the money, but right now, we can't leave our kids hanging. They need this, regardless, you know, I mean, I know this just happened to happen to us now, so I just think we need to do what's right for our kids.
Ms. Carbonell?
Dr. Taylor, as part of the graduation requirements, is world language a requirement for graduation?
It's not a requirement for graduation. However,
Dr. Perez, is world language a requirement for graduation?
As far as I know, I don't believe.
are you suggesting 4 years?
Not 4 years.
Okay, so I do believe it's a 2-year requirement. But
That's what I mean.
yeah,
So the students
2-year
that are taking
requirement.
French 1, French 2 are getting credits for towards their graduation.
Right.
That's what I meant.
Ms. Santana?
So when we're saying we're leaving, so there's no one in the room right now for these AP classes?
That's correct.
It's an empty room with children by themselves?
We've had substitutes supervising the students,
Oh,
but
okay. So there's at least a substitute in the room, correct?
correct.
So it's not like if we're just leaving children alone in a room?
Never.
My license would be revoked if we.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because it's $50,000. And is there any way we could pull up the data for the amount of children in AP French at the moment?
I'm sorry.
Do you not hear me? Is there any way that we can pull up the data for AP, how many children right now this is affecting?
Dr. Chris, can you do that if you're in Genesis? I'm sorry, I'm out of power.
I'm not, don't worry.
I'm back. Testing. You got me? We'll have Dr. Perez look at the numbers for you.
Ms. Carbonell?
This is not just about AP French, agree? This is AP French 1, French 2, please verify. And there are 138 students impacted.
I don't know the exact number, but
That was the number that was given to me.
okay.
Wait,
Hold on. I know Gretel's looking. Go ahead.
Wait, so that's a different statement. There's no French teacher in the high school at the moment?
There is one French teacher.
No,
in
yes,
high
there is,
school.
because I met her. Okay. No, yes, there is, because I met her. So that's my question. So this is not just impacting AP?
French
It's
one or
impacting a
French
range of
two,
classes. We can
French
tell you the entire group of classes if you'd like.
Might as well.
Dr. Perez, if you don't, I can look it up if you can't. All right. Actually, Jerry, it looks like you're on Genesis. So Mr. Bataquista go over the exact classes we need to cover.
I think we have
Do
to
you believe
do
it
that
ranges
even
from
if
French
this
1 all the
don't
way up to AP? I recognize the board's concern and there needs to be discussion about this matter, but I must remind everyone, even if we only had a handful of 50 students in the class, these students are now in March or April, getting into April. We'll only have 2 months left of school with nothing to show for French if we don't provide them something.
Unacceptable.
Ms. Santana?
With all due respect, I completely understand everything that you're saying, but it's $50,000 for 3 months, and we just scrutinized a budget where all I heard about was getting rid of paras again and teachers. So it's $50,000 and it's a lot. And I get it, the children do need teachers, 100%, but I need to know more data. We need to be more data-driven and not just listen to
We presented 3 options to the Education Committee, the others being Babel and, what's it? Oh, Rosetta Stone. We looked at other options. The Education Committee felt the best option was this one. I also must remind the board that we approached the board a month ago. We could have made this decision then.
All right, all right, any other questions? Because now it's just up for a vote.
Right.
We got a first, we got a second, we had discussion. Any other questions? She's looking for it, but we can vote. It could either be a yes or a no at this point.
Well, I'd like to know data before I vote.
Well, we'll have to sit and wait for the data. Yes.
This is an emergency. This is not anything that we decided from September to now. If, as we understood, getting a French teacher, I know a lot of people can't believe that, but if you read last week's New York Times, Sunday's Times, it even said there is a shortage of Spanish-speaking teachers across the country. The situation of the romantic languages that we knew when we all went to school, the French, the Spanish, the Italian, or whatever at that time, was the type of class you went to. If you were going to become an engineer, you went to a German class. The Latin and all that, for some reason or another, is not attractive as it used to be. Now, universities have changed their agenda as well. I'm not saying all the agendas, but they have changed. We may have to look down this road as far as changing the curriculum as far as what languages we're going to use. Sign language should be.
all right.
I know it's in the city of New York, we have it, and that's another thing. So, right now, why put these young children, these young students in jeopardy for a couple of months? Yeah, it's a lot of money, but if you've got a situation at your home where the damn roof is leaking, what are you gonna do? You're gonna try to find the lowest possible denominator to get the roof fixed, or you're gonna get the first guy that's willing to come out and fix it?
Thank you, Ms. O'Shea. Is there an answer to
Yeah,
Ms.
Mr.
Santana's
Bataquista has
question?
the information Ms. Santana.
Okay, let's hear it.
So period 1, there's 23 students, period 2 is 20. Period 1 is French, honors French 3, and there's 23 students. Period 2 is French 2, and there's 20 students. Period 3 is a mix of AP French, French 5, and honors French 4, for a total of 14 students. Period 4 is French 2, and there's 19 students. And then period 7 is French 3, and there's 22 students. Period 8, French 2, and there's 20 students. And period 9 it's an Honors French 2 and an Honors French 3, and there's 19 students. And that's it.
It's about 140 kids.
I just have one more comment, and I'll end it there. So are we doing something so next year we're not in this predicament?
We're going to make every effort possible, put our advertisements in the Ledger. Mr. Benequista and Mr. Rattino are going to Kane University next week, I believe, for the recruiting fair.
Or realistically look at expectations as to what we really can offer, because this is ridiculous, but with 100 kids impacted, what else can we do?
I don't know that at this moment. I can get that for you tomorrow if you'd like.
But then again, what do we do for the other 126
Well,
students?
and there's
that
only
have
5.
I don't think you can do it now.
And there's 5 students for just in the AP, because it's split, there's 3 levels in that class, so 5 are AP.
We budgeted for a teacher next year, so it's, we're not reducing this position. We're still intending on trying to find.
Mrs. Williams?
If we don't find a French teacher, what happens?
In my view, there are a few
This
options.
program, yeah, so if we don't find anyone for
One-
September, what's going to happen?
I'm concerned that we won't have enough time to survey the community and then pivot to a different language. So the likelihood is we would look for an additional Spanish teacher or additional German teacher to offer another additional sections for students who want to continue their studies. I found in my previous experience, we need to put in at least, I would give it a year looking for a French teacher until we really decide we're going to move away from French. It was a big decision in my previous district. So that's not something I would take lightly. Some people are wedded to the language. We have a number of Creole families in town and speak the language to an extent. And so yeah, we'd have to do that, expand sections, Spanish and German.
Any other questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby? Yes. Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heaton?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
I'm going to say yes, but with reservations.
And Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Next, we have grievance negotiations. Mr. Buggy?
Yes, Madam. Yes, Madam President. I believe we're tabling G1, and then G2, which the board will be voting on, is now therefore be it resolved on this 14th day of March 2023 regarding Union Township Education Association grievance number 22-23-3, level 3. The Township of Union Board of Education overturns the decision at level 2 and sustains the grievance as modified and agreed to by the UTEA.
Just for clarification, it's only G1.
Right.
So if you could read that resolution again, please, just for clarification.
Sure. G1, now therefore be it resolved on this 14th day of March 2023 regarding Union Township Education Association grievance number 22-23-3, level 3. The Township of Union Board of Education overturns the decision at level 2 and sustains the grievance as modified and agreed to by the UTEA.
May I have a motion?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell? Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby? Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heaton?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Next, we have operations. Vice President Santana?
Upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Operation Committee presents the following resolutions for the board's consideration. 01, approve security drill bus evacuation reports. O2, approve a proposal for demographic services, statistical forecasting. O3, approve request from Township of Union / parking lots. And O4, approve camp invention at Jefferson School.
May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby?
Yes to everything except O2 because just wanted some background information about the privacy in terms of student privacy, and that was not provided, so no to O2.
Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Next, we will have personnel. Mrs. Scott Heeden.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the personnel committee presents the following resolution for the board's consideration. P1A, personnel action new hires. P1B, personnel actions extra pay. P1C, personnel action transfers. P2, approve student teachers into internships. P3, accept letters of resignation and retirement. P4, approve leaves. And P5, approve updated job description for manager of security. P6, approve termination of employee number 13118. And P7, approve termination of employee number 12914.
May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just one on P5. We are reestablishing a job description for the security, manager of security, or is this a new title?
No, changing, well, Debbie can speak to it. I'll leave it.
It's just an update. When the organizational chart changed,
Yeah.
the job description never did, so we updated at the same time. Yes, the one, yeah.
Any other discussion? Ms. Burns Watson, then you.
No, let her go first.
Go ahead, Ms.
Yeah, just wanted to say congratulations to Ms. Miller. I've known Ms. Miller for a very long time, and she's retiring. So I just wanted to just give her a big shout out. Congratulations on her retirement.
Thank you. Ms. Burns Watson.
Thank you. Are we supposed to know or have any background information on P6 and P7?
I provided that information to the Personnel Committee, but had you requested earlier, I probably could have
I don't have it.
provided you that information.
Yeah. Okay.
And we can't talk about it right here?
No, we cannot. I know that. I know this much.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby?
Yes to everything except abstain from P6 and P7.
Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Next, we have policy, Mrs. Williams.
Upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the policy committee presents the following policies for the board's consideration. These are for final reading. It's policy 7510, use of school facilities, policy 5200, attendance, and regulation 5200, attendance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I have a comment. Just in reference to policy 7510, when we do start implementing this, I think that we need to definitely communicate with the public, let everybody know of our stance on it, so that nobody is taken by surprise and nobody says, oh, you know, when did this happen? So I strongly encourage admin to make sure we rally the troops, yell it from the rooftops, and let everybody know.
Thank you. Mrs. Manisi.
I was going to say something similar. In reading through it, I didn't see some of my concerns about the locking and the times and all that stuff. So I concur with Ms. Santana that, when it's time, we're going to do this, that all the information is communicated.
Ahead of time, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Any other questions? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea? Mrs. Regis Darby?
Yes.
Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Next, we will have residency. Mrs. Manisi.
Okay, upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the residency committee presents the following resolutions for the board's consideration, R1 through R6.
Okay. Discussion? No discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby? Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Okay, there was no technology committee meeting this month. May I have a motion to approve the bills list?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Thank you. Who, who moved it and who seconded?
Santana? Whichever way you want.
Santana McKenzie, however you want it. Discussion? All right, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Brins Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Carbonell?
Yes.
Mrs. Manisi?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Regis Darby? Ms. Santana?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott Heeden?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McKenzie?
Yes. Is there any unfinished business?
I just wanted to know if there was any movement on the sign at Hannah Colwell, because I looked into it and it is, maybe Mr. Bundy can give me clarity. I believe that it is a violation of ADA, so in terms of the sign says no dogs are allowed. And I think that is a clear violation on that act, because service dogs are allowed to go anywhere. Point in taking, you guys have the service dogs here that goes into all of our schools. So I think that sign is a clear violation of the ADA Act, and it should be removed.
I can assure you, Ms. Coonan and I spoke to Mr. White, our facilities manager, that next morning, and he's been directed to change out the signs. So we're going to update them. Mr. Buggy,
No, I don't have anything now. No.
We can't say to that. That's
do you
it.
have a service dog, Mr. Buggy?
No?
I do not.
Oh,
Any other unfinished business?
I don't know if it's unfinished or if it should go in new business, but I just want to say that, I guess it's 2 weeks already that I went to Livingston School for Read Across America, and I did read with 2 pre-K classes. It was so much fun. I had a hat, and there was lots of pictures, but it was just very, very sweet to be there. The kids were great. The teachers were very accepting and welcoming. The building is, of course, a great building to visit. So I just want to thank them for having me come in. It was great.
Thank you. Ms. Santana, Ms. Brins Watson, and then Ms. Scott Heeden.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is old or new business, but I just wanted to echo, I love our schools. I had the fortune of going to the high school last month's, or this month's PTA meeting, and unfortunately, I did not get my ticket for the tricky tray, but don't worry, I have a lot more years to go. But I just want to say kudos and thank you to all the women and men that put in so much time to volunteer, to lead our PTAs. Looking forward to KMS PTA meeting, which is March 20th at 7 p.m. That's a plug. And while I'm at it, why not, right? $7, it gives the kids, you know, your level, your PTA membership, and it's really your level of involvement. If you never want to do anything, never do anything. If you just want to go in once, it supports our kids. It gives so many things for the school, for the teachers, for the kids, for the parents that put a time their side. So please consider those $7 to be a PTA member. And I'm sorry it took me so long to get there.
Ms. Brins Watson.
Yes, old business. So last meeting, I did ask the question in regards to the 7th period stipends. And I have to say I was disappointed because I did not receive a satisfactory response to my question. My question was, have the administrators in the buildings been instructed to stop paying 7th period stipends when people are not teaching 7th period stipend? I don't want it done next year, 3 months from now. I want it done 2 months from now. In the past. It should have been done. It should have been done at the time that this was brought up. it was earlier said here, we had fantastic teachers in this district, fantastic. And I am so thankful and lucky, and I will say this to anybody, it's usually very difficult for me to identify with individuals who tell me that they're not having a good experience with teachers in this district because my kids have had such a wonderful experience. So it's difficult. I have to make an effort. I think it's insulting to the teachers who actually put the effort for us to continue this practice, which is, I don't think is even legal. In a district where our nurses are severely underpaid, our bus drivers are severely underpaid, our maintenance people, we're talking about cutting materials, instructional materials in the classroom. I say this not only as a board member, but as a taxpayer in this district. I want every penny of my taxes to go towards instruction. That's where I want it to go, and I want it to go there now, not next year. I want it now, and I am going to keep on banging on this and telling anybody on this district who will listen to me about this. We are paying 7th period stipends to individuals even when it's a holiday, it's a weekend, I don't know. They're just sometimes not in the classroom. Please stop it. Stop it. We're bleeding money. So let's stop bleeding money.
Ms. Gaiden.
All right, Ms. Watson is fired up. Follow that. I hear you, Ms. Watson.
Thanks to you all.
Absolutely. So I just want to piggyback on. I had the experience and the pleasure to go to Washington schools, read across America. It was a great experience. I sent Dr. Taylor my videos and pictures of the students who were able to be in pictures. I would just like to say thank you to the Union Fire Department and Union Police Department. Our students was enthusiastic to see our public servants before them reading Dr. Seuss in uniform. And the one classroom that I went into was kindergartners, and the gentleman who was actually reading the story was going through his own little antics and adding the words, and it just had the students so engaged, and they were just thrilled to be there. And upon talking to him, hearing that he was also a student of Washington School previously, and saw one of his former teachers there as well. So the day was very eventful. I felt like our students received it well. It was an honor to be amongst them. I know that they're doing a play on Friday at the school. I believe it starts at 12 p.m. and then it's one in the evening. I will be present for the 12 p.m. production. I also want to say thank you to Dr. Teller for inviting Ms. Santana and I, Madam Vice President. We attended the Unsung Hero event at King College, where students from across Union County was honored for just their efforts in school and community as a whole. So I just want to say that Union had their own, we had our student up there as well, Nick, and congratulations to him. And it just was an honor to be in that space to see our students from across the county thriving and being recognized where they ordinarily would not be recognized. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you.
I also had the opportunity to go to Livingston School and read to the kids. I had Mrs. Keneally's 3rd grade class. We didn't do Dr. Seuss because prior to me reading to the students, Mrs. Keneally explained to the kids it was Women's History Month and they're going to be celebrating women. So I found a book. I can't remember the name of it, but I can remember the name of the author, and it's Trinka Hakes Noble. And in addition to being a woman celebrating women's history, she is from New Jersey. So it was really nice. I remember it was Jimmy's birthday bash or something like that. And after I finished reading, we talked about the kids' pets, and we found out who had what pets, and they all thought that a boa constrictor would make a good pet. So 2 of the children, and I don't have the pictures with me, drew pictures because I told them that my pet was Discus, and then Mrs. Keneally pulled up what Discus were up on the board, and they're like, oh, they're so pretty. So one of the children drew a fish tank for me, and then the other one drew a self-portrait. So she had my glasses, she had my little curly hair and everything. So it was a really, really great experience. It was a lot of fun, and the kids were phenomenal and engaging, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm just so proud of our kids.
Thank you. New business? Ms. Santana?
So under new business, Kim stole a little bit of my thunder, but I'm going to talk about it. So yes, I had the wonderful opportunity to go to Unsung Heroes this year. And for those of you that don't know what it is, it's, well, what they do in Union County is every school goes in with the principal, and they basically just elect or vote on one student that is exactly that, like not your traditional unsung hero. This year it was Nicholas Cassandra here for our school. We were just, his parents were there, everybody was so happy. But I did want to just touch of what's going on in our county. One of the little girls, I won't say names, she was a refugee. She came here, her parents are in another country, she's living with some sponsors, and she's thriving. Even through it all, she was still getting straight A's. There was another young gentleman, or young boy, wow, that his mother's sick, and he's working a full-time job, going to school, still getting straight A's, taking care of his little brothers and sisters, and he was elected for this unsung hero. And just thinking of all these wonderful kids that we are here for, or that we do what we do for. And I don't even know if we can go, if the public's allowed, but I invite everyone to go year after year because it is so much. Oh, I thought they were saying my time was up. I was going to say, I fought for unlimited time. So just talking about that, the Unsung Heroes, it was a great experience. Children from Union County being recognized for all the greatness that they do every day.
Ms. Santana's talking about Nick Cassandra. Nick Cassandra was our unsung hero. He's a great kid. And Ms. Scott Hayden, thanks for being there as well, both you and Ms. Santana.
All right, at this time, okay, go right ahead.
I have one more. I just wanted to echo Mrs. Carbonell praises of the high school and the open house because the energy was fantastic. Again, I mean, I'm not just proud of our kids, I'm proud of our educators, and the effort that was put into showing our classrooms and highlighting our science programs and our engineering, you know, and the printer, the virtual printer, you name it. You know, the kids were running all over the place. I always go back home, and my husband says, hug your child because he runs up and down those stairs and manages to navigate that entire building. And I'm like, yeah, I'm exhausted. I came home, I was very tired. I can't imagine anybody on this district hasn't gone to one of our high school productions yet. If you're one of those people, shame on you, go to a high school production, go to Mamma Mia. We have some amazing voices in this town. These kids, I'm telling you, they're Broadway bound. We have some that have come to Broadway from here, and you're gonna get some more. So catch them before they become the stars. That's one thing. So it got me thinking because I was approached by some parents about the open house and how did we know about the open house? And I'm just thinking, how did everybody who is not in the district coming from the middle schools knows about the open house? Because there was so much effort put into this. Is there any way that can happen again? Because I think there are families out there that are not in the district. They're coming from the Catholic schools and other places who did not know that this was happening, and it's a shame that they would miss out on this opportunity to experience what our schools are like. I'm just putting it out there. I know it takes an amazing amount of effort to put that together. It takes time from the teachers, it takes time from us. Everybody's involved. So.
In hindsight, I'm thinking what we could have done is reached out to Sal Terraza and make sure TV34 puts the word out, posts social media. So certainly next year we'll do that.
We need to push
I'll work
more
with
for
Nicole
that.
Ahern for
I
that.
think you would get
Great point.
a bigger response to it.
Any other new business? Okay. At this time, we will entertain comments from the public. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address. Thank you.
David Arminio, 1032 Woodland Avenue. Before I start, I loved Unsung Heroes. It was absolutely fantastic. And we did host it here at Union High School a number of years ago. And it is a fantastic event. The Union Township Historical Society will be hosting County Clerk Joanne Rajapi on March 26th, who will present 20th Century Women, based on her new book. Rajapi will trace the cause women travel toward equality in society and opportunities in education and employment during times of changing cultural values. Admission is free. And the presentation will take place at the Connecticut Farms Presbyterian Church on Stuyvesant Avenue. The Friends of the Union Public Library had a fundraiser on March 6th to raise money for the summer reading program, and it took place at the Cold Stone Creamery. A number of Chamber of Commerce members donated funds to buy gift cards, which were then given out to the first 40 Union students who entered the store. And they and their parents were like, whoa, $10 gift cards to buy ice cream. So it was really nice. The Rotary Club will be hosting a family fitness fest on Saturday, May 13th from 9 to 1. All proceeds from the event will be donated to 2 Union students who are in desperate need. More details to follow in April. The Rotary Club is also going to recognize one student from each school who demonstrate the qualities of Rotarians of truthfulness and service to others above self. 3 dates have been set starting with March 23rd, when Jefferson, Burnett, and Kwame students, along with their parent and the principal, will have lunch, and the students will be presented with a $50 gift card and a certificate of recognition. And finally, on June 7th, the Rotary Club will have the annual Eloquence Soiree, where the top 3 students from a Union high school oratorical contest sponsored by the Rotary Club will present their speeches, and scholarships will be presented. And members of the community who have had an impact will be recognized. And don't forget, the semi-quincentennial is 1 month closer. And I'd like to read you the mission statement from the 250th anniversary. It is to commemorate our 250th anniversary with inclusive programs that inspire Americans to renew and strengthen our daring experiment in democracy.
Thank you.
Mr. Arminio, what was the time for Rajopi? Did I miss it? 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Madam President, I just have a comment. I move that we name Mr. Arminio the voice of union.
Absolutely.
Put it out there, you know.
Absolutely. We wholeheartedly support that. Any other comments from the public?
Louisa Baez, 591 Duquesne Terrace. So I was at the high school, the 7th and 8th grade orientation, and I do agree it was a great turnout. However, because we can offer some great programs in the Union High School, I am in agreement with Jocasta. However, we might offer them to the private high schools. You know, we could try to do that. However, what is it that, why is it that we lose so many high schoolers to the high school? Let's talk about safety. Yet again. We still have the war zone going on in the bathroom. My son does not go to the bathroom. The locking in between classes has helped a little bit. However, we need solutions. I am not hearing solutions. I heard PD on vaping. I understand that. However, we need to get a plan, an action plan to put into place. This is month 4 that I'm saying we need solutions, and I still don't have solutions. We need scanning of IDs. We know the problem. I've been saying it, we've been saying it, everyone's been saying it, but where are the solutions? Where are the solutions? We need solutions. Where are the scanning of IDs? I understand it costs money. I do understand it costs money, but we are spending $50,000 on a virtual teacher. I'm not saying yay or nay. However, I am saying that we where are those parents complaining that their AP students don't have a teacher? So we need to figure something out with what we are, the parents that are showing up. It's not a lot, but we're showing up. I'm here. I'm here. I will be here. I will continue to be here. Okay, so the whole war zone with the vaping, with everything, accountability, parents must be responsible. We cannot afford to pay for all this. We need to make parents somehow pay for it, take away their phones, because they'll show up for phones being taken away. That's how they'll show up. That's how I work in a school district. I know how parents show up. Take away their phones, they're coming in for their phones. So let's make things happen. Let's do things. Let's shake it around here. We need to get some different techniques. Let's change it up. We can't do the same thing and expect different results. It's not going to happen. Now we're getting towards the end of the year. We have to think about next year. How about we do a freshman wing to transition these kids into the high school? An honors wing. Let's do something to make this high school different and make it better. I have an incoming freshman next year. Now I'll have two students in the high school. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I have other stuff to say, but I guess
Thank you.
it'll wait for next month.
Is there anyone else?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Don't we still have the freshman for a day program? Did we
I'll
get
get back to you. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Unless Mr. Benequist or Dr. Perez are aware of that. Freshman for a day.
Because
I'll
if we
find out and
don't,
email you.
I think it'd be something we ought to bring back.
Ma'am.
So Atencio 340 Wheel Drive. The reason why I'm here tonight is because I feel like children with IEP are not getting their support, the support they need in the classrooms. I know there's a shortage of teachers and there's a lot of problems, but we have to find solutions. There has to be more that can be done, because my kid was literally failing his class. IEP meeting, to the surprise of Child 13 and everyone in the table, the teacher wasn't showing up. And when he shows up, it's just for a few minutes. My kid was not having support. And it's not only my kid. What about the other 5 kids in the class? I feel like we have to do better. I mean, when we campaign for Board of Ed and any other position in the district, we all campaign of like, how are we gonna support our special need community? I mean, we invest money on programs or reviews or contracts for people to come into our district to see and look into data or papers. I don't know. But the parents, we actually reach out to Child 13, to special services. They all, like, you guys have all of it there. You don't need to go find it somewhere else. You have it. You have that data. You don't, like, you can just see, you have everyone is being emailing day and night. Special services, there's nothing they can do. There's just no teachers, no structure. I mean, we were lucky that this overworked general teacher took time to make a phone call so we can actually figure out, because his IEP was being violated. His legal IEP, a legal document, like an IEP was violated. No accommodations were followed or modification on this class. Thank God she was kind to take a time to call, and I could figure out this with her. He shows up 5 out of 5, probably 2 times, and then now I heard that he's there and he goes to another classes. So I'm guessing he's covering for other periods, because the teachers are overworked. Everybody's tired. You know, I just hear other things about, like, there is no buses, there is no driver. Like, we really need to do better. We can incentive, pay better. People get better pay. People come to work. People, teachers, they want to do their job. They need support. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you send me an
No, I'm done with talking in private.
Oh,
I
okay.
want results.
Yeah,
No, thank you. I want results.
Okay.
I want my kid to be supported. I think you can do that.
Anyone else?
I want to say you're doing a good job, Madam President.
Oh, thank you.
Just want to say you really are.
Thank you, Dr.
I wanted to talk about those cannons outside. I mentioned that.
Gotta
as
state your
a-
name and address,
oh.
sir, for the record.
Dr. Francis, 297. Colonial Avenue.
Got you.
I want all my minutes back, all right?
You wasted time.
I want to say about those cannons outside, now mention about the dog issue. You have those cannons outside still with no tires on there. It's just a safety hazard that's going to happen. Someone's going to go play on it. They're going to get cut. They're going to get hurt. And then we're going to have a lawsuit. It seems like in this district, we like to give money away all the time. At least we try to find ways to give it away. And so, and I do want to say thank you to Ms. Brenz Watson about echoing what I was saying about the 7th period stipends, because that was brought to my attention. I know you guys discussed it last week, and I want to say that if it is happening, because I think I might have struck a nerve with the UTA leadership, but if it is happening, it's a theft of service. It's just the bottom line. If I rob 10 banks and finally get caught, I can't claim past practice. I can't say that, oh, I robbed 10 banks and I've been doing it. No, I'm going to go to jail. And so this is going to rely on you, Dr. Taylor, and also you, Ms. Kuhn. It's going to be on you too. Okay? So I'm just saying that if that is the case, we should go back and get the money, because it's theft. You're paying people for not working. So, and like I said, and I'll double down on what I said about the board handed the union a good contract, and to their advantage. I mean, listen, you guys gave it to them. That's just the bottom line. And so it did cost us money, but thank God that we got $7 million to offset some of that, because if not, it was going to cost some cuts, some deep cuts. And they'll be the first one to tell you can't cut our members. And I would say, oh, yes, you can, because that's the price of doing business. You sacrifice sometimes your own people. Okay? And that's all I'm going to say for now. But I'm going to come back. I'm going to say some stuff. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Anyone else? Of course.
Je m'appelle Anne-Margaret Shannon et je suis très malheureuse, très malheureuse. Shannon, 2591 Spruce Street. I'm very sad about the French thing. What I don't understand is if there's going to be a person on the other end of the screen, because it sounds like that's different from the last time that there was no person. So if there's a person on the other end of the screen, can we just Uber them to the high school? Like, why can't they come to the high school if they're on the other end of the screen? I don't think they're really going to be on the other end of the screen. I think it might be like maybe part-time. I don't know. I'm a little concerned. But what I'm really more concerned about is, and I've said this before, I really think it's disservice to the public that you guys walk on something, anything, after the original public comments period is over. So then we can't even, have a say in it, because you guys walking on and then you vote on it. So if we're going to have executive meetings in the beginning of the meetings, it looks like maybe if there's a walk-on, we can, I don't know, walk them on before the public session so that we can say something to it. But I'm just really sad, and I'm just going to pray that we find a French teacher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have the certification? You
Any other public comments? May I have a motion to adjourn? May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call?
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Yes, see you at the retreat. Yes.